The thing that intrigues me about Thomas Day, I suppose more than anything else, was that he was a very unlikely figure in his times. I couldn't have imagined a person with the qualities he had and with the determination he had to succeed in the face of what I would think were practically insurmountable odds. He was not passing as a white man. I don't think he could have. But he had so many of the attributes of, I won't say white people, but of free, first-class citizens. If he wanted to say that I ought to belong to that church, I ought to sit in that pew, which I made in the first place, he expected people to accede to his wishes.
Thomas Day lived and worked in Caswell County, North Carolina in the 19th century. He was a skilled artisan. He was a person of mixed racial ancestry, meaning that he was fair-skinned and he literally wore on his body both the African race and the European race. This is a very complicated and provocative and fascinating story that if we rely on the old models for trying to explain or understand African American history, we really do a disservice to Thomas Day, and beyond that, we're just simply wrong.
Thomas Day's shop was really a remarkably diverse setting. Here we have a free African American furniture maker with white journeymen, with some free black journeymen. We know he had white apprentices, and he had slaves working in his shop. This is a bit surprising to a lot of modern viewers who tend to have this rather stereotypical black and white notion about the early South.
Being a black artist in North Carolina in the antebellum period, you have to have a little nerve and a little bit of guts to kind of survive in that world. And what really strikes me about Thomas Day's work is a kind of a brashness. When you think of a newel post, I mean, it's a pretty bland kind of object that simply holds up the balustrade as you're going up and down stairs. But here was something created in the early 19th century that was a piece of art as well as a functional object. A piece of art that moves and dances and almost rotates on its own. I guess what I'm talking about is that kind of indescribable sense of an object and the way it was carved and created having a presence and having a power. An object that was created over 100 years ago, you can look at, you can touch, you can sit on, you can lay on, you can place objects on, and if you feel a connection to it, that's something very special.
Whenever there was a new baby, maybe a grandchild or a niece or great-niece or great-nephew, and a little cradle would appear from the attic, and a new mattress, of course, and then the little baby would occupy that cradle for maybe 6 weeks. So I asked Mama one day, what was the significance of that cradle? And Mama said, well, that cradle was made in Milton by a colored man named Tom Day. She said 4 generations of babies had been rocked in that cradle. Just as sturdy as it was the day it was built. I just think the man is well worth studying. He certainly left his mark in the world of art. And the little cradle sits in the corner, waiting for the next generation.
I'm fascinated by a person who rises above his station in life that someone else has defined for him. He rises above it and defines his station for himself, you see. He said, I'm going to be Thomas Day, the cabinet maker, the citizen of this community, the member of this church, and I expect you to respect me for it. And they do. Now that's really remarkable. In the 1840s and 50s, it's just remarkable.